After 7 years of working multiple jobs to fund my husband's dream, he took me to court, encouraged by his mother, and mocked me in front of the entire courtroom. "She's only after my wealth," he smirked. "She never even worked a real job." But when I stood up and said, "Your Honor, I'd like to submit this prenup from Paris." "She's only after my wealth," Corbin smirked, his eyes cold as winter glass. "She never even worked a real job." The courtroom fell silent. 7 years of sacrifice reduced to mockery by the man I had given everything for. His mother Mia sat behind him, nodding smugly, her manicured nails tapping against the polished wooden bench. The expensive lawyer beside Corbin shuffled papers importantly while throwing condescending glances my way. I stood up, my legs trembling but my voice steady. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit this prenup from Paris." The gasps were audible. Corbin's face drained of color as memories of that drunken night in Montmartre suddenly sobered him 7 years too late. But before I tell you how this ends, let me tell you how it began. I was 28 when I met Corbin Reynolds at a mutual friend's dinner party. Back then I was Cora Matthews, rising star at Meridian Financial Group, with a corner office and a salary that turned heads. My boss had just recommended me for the executive training program, the first stepping stone to senior management. "You're going places, Matthews," he'd said that very morning. "Not many analysts get this opportunity before 30. That night at the party, Corbin talked about his tech startup idea with such passion that the entire room gravitated toward him. An inventory management system that would revolutionize small businesses, he claimed. His eyes sparkled when he detailed the algorithms, the market potential, the future he envisioned. "The problem is capital," he confided later when we were alone on the balcony. "No one wants to invest in an unproven concept." 3 months into our whirlwind romance, Corbin's laptop died. The one containing all his coding work. He couldn't afford to replace it. I bought him a new one without hesitation. "You're investing in our future," he said, kissing me. "I'll pay you back tenfold." By 6 months, Corbin had quit his IT consulting job to focus on his startup full-time. His savings dwindled rapidly while investor meetings yielded nothing but empty promises. I started covering more of our shared expenses, then his rent, then his car payment. "It's temporary," he assured me over discount ramen dinners. "Once we get the seed money, everything changes." 1 year in, we were engaged and I faced a decision. Meridian was transferring their executive trainees to London for a year-long intensive program. Going meant climbing faster up the corporate ladder. Staying meant supporting Corbin's dream. "I'd understand if you went," he said, but his slumped shoulders told a different story. I declined the transfer. 2 weeks later, my position was restructured. A polite corporate way of showing me the door. "Maybe it's a blessing in disguise," Corbin suggested, holding me while I cried. "Now you can help me build our company." What followed was a descent I never imagined. First, I took a position as an administrative assistant at half my former salary. When that wasn't enough to cover Corbin's prototype development costs, I picked up weekend shifts at Riverdale Diner. Soon I was driving for share ride on weeknights after my day job ended. My old colleagues would sometimes slide into my car, their embarrassed recognition painful. "Cora, I thought you were on the executive track." I'd smile and explain about supporting my fiancé's startup, how I was investing in our future. They'd nod sympathetically, but I recognized the pity in their eyes. Meanwhile, Corbin worked 18-hour days in our apartment, emerging only for coffee and occasional food. On the rare nights we were both home, he'd talk excitedly about coding breakthroughs and potential investors while I soaked my swollen feet and calculated how to stretch our budget another month. We married at the courthouse with only his mother Mia in attendance. My family couldn't understand why I'd abandoned my career for a man with pie-in-the-sky ideas, as my father put it. "You're throwing away everything you worked for," my sister warned during our last real conversation. Mia never approved of me. From the beginning, her thin-lipped smile communicated her belief that her son had married beneath him. "Corbin needs a partner who understands his genius," she'd say, examining my waitress uniform with poorly concealed disdain. "Someone who can match his ambition." For our honeymoon, Corbin unexpectedly announced we were going to Paris. He'd secured a meeting with a French investor and convinced them to cover our travel expenses. "We deserve this break," he insisted, though I knew we couldn't afford it. Paris was beautiful but strained. Corbin spent most days in meetings while I wandered the city alone. On our third night, his investor meeting went exceptionally well, culminating in a celebratory dinner where Corbin drank far too much champagne. While he slept off his excitement in our hotel room, I made a decision. I'd supported his dream, sacrificed my career, worked 3 jobs simultaneously, but I needed protection. A business-savvy American expat I'd met at a cafe recommended her lawyer friend who specialized in international contracts. The next morning, while Corbin recovered with aspirin and coffee, I met with Monsieur Beaumont. Together, we drafted a prenuptial agreement acknowledging my financial contributions to the startup entitled me to 49% ownership. We included a clause recognizing my sweat equity, the years of multiple jobs supporting us while Corbin developed his company. That evening, amid more celebration and flowing wine, I presented the document as investment paperwork the French investor had requested. Corbin, too intoxicated to read the fine print, signed with a flourish. "To our future," he toasted, completely unaware of what he'd agreed to. Back home the pattern continued. I worked, he coded. Slowly, incrementally, his business gained traction. A small investment here, a beta tester there. After 3 years of struggle, Restock Solutions finally secured its first paying client. As business improved, our relationship deteriorated. Corbin started staying at the office overnight, claiming deadlines. He hired an assistant, Rebecca, whose qualifications seemed more aesthetic than professional. Mia became increasingly present in our lives, often dropping by the office to help with client relations. "You wouldn't understand the business aspects," she told me when I questioned a decision. "Best leave that to those who know." By year 5, I was still working multiple jobs despite the company's growing success. Corbin insisted all profits be reinvested. Our apartment remained small, our car secondhand, our lifestyle modest, sacrifices for the greater goal, he said. But I noticed changes. His clothes improved. His watch. His haircut. Small luxuries he justified as necessary for client impressions, while I continued wearing thrift store finds to my 3 jobs. "Be patient," he'd say, barely looking up from his phone. "We're almost there." By the 7th year, I barely recognized either of us. The ambitious financial analyst and passionate entrepreneur had been replaced by an exhausted worker and an increasingly distant CEO who now called himself Sieur in business settings. The distance between us grew until we were strangers sharing an address. I became invisible, my sacrifices, my contributions, my very presence fading into the background of Corbin's increasingly successful story. I never imagined the final chapter would begin in a courtroom with my husband's cruel smirk and his shocking words. "She never even worked a real job." Everything shifted on a Tuesday in March. I remember because I had just finished a double shift at the diner when Corbin called, his voice electric with excitement. "We got it, Cora. Venture capital funding, $8 million. His words tumbled out breathlessly. "Anderson Partners is backing us. We're scaling up immediately." I sank onto a bench outside the diner, my tired brain struggling to process what this meant. For 7 years we'd scraped by on promises and potential. Now suddenly it was real. "Does this mean I can quit one of my jobs?" I asked, hope rising in my chest for the first time in years. A brief pause. "Let's not be hasty. We need to reinvest everything for maximum growth. But soon, I promise." 2 weeks later, Restock Solutions moved from our spare bedroom to actual office space in the Westbrook Business Park. Corbin hired developers, marketers, and sales staff. He started wearing tailored suits and coming home with stories about business lunches at restaurants I couldn't afford to eat at. Then came Rebecca. "She's the best executive assistant in the industry," Corbin explained over a rare dinner together. "Her organizational skills are exactly what I need to manage everything." Rebecca Morgan was 27, Stanford-educated, with gleaming chestnut hair and a wardrobe of sleek pantsuits. When I first met her at the company's office warming party, she assessed me with cool professionalism. "Oh, you're Corbin's wife. How fascinating to meet you." Her smile never reached her eyes. "He rarely mentions his personal life at the office." The comment stung more than it should have. I was wearing my best dress, 3 years old and purchased on clearance, while carrying a tray of homemade appetizers I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. preparing between shifts. "Cora likes keeping things simple," Corbin interjected, gently taking the tray from me. "Rebecca, Could you show her where to set up the food? I need to greet the investors. I became the wife that evening, introduced briefly, then politely relegated to the background while Corbin shone at the center of his newly expanding universe. Mia arrived fashionably late, embracing her son with theatrical affection before turning to assess the gathering. "Darling, this is just the beginning," she gushed, adjusting his tie. "I knew you were destined for greatness." She acknowledged me with a brisk nod. The cheese plate needs refreshing." "Be a dear." I bit back my response, reminding myself this was Corbin's moment. But something shifted that night. For the first time I felt like an outsider looking in. The following months brought rapid change. Corbin hired a CFO despite my finance background and experience managing the company's books for years. "We need someone with enterprise-level experience," he explained dismissively when I questioned the decision. "You've done your best, but we're in the big leagues now." My suggestions about financial strategy were increasingly met with patronizing smiles or outright dismissal. Meanwhile, Mia began appearing at the office regularly, attending meetings and offering opinions on everything from marketing strategies to office decor. "Mother has excellent taste and knows the right people," Corbin defended when I questioned her involvement. "Her connections are opening doors for us." Those doors remained firmly closed to me. When I stopped by the office one afternoon, bringing lunch for Corbin as a surprise, I found the reception area transformed. Previously bare walls now displayed framed photos documenting the company's journey. Corbin pitching to investors. Corbin signing the funding deal. Corbin cutting the ribbon on the new office. Corbin accepting a local business award. 7 years of history, carefully curated to erase any trace of my contribution. "Can I help you?" Rebecca's voice was professionally polite as she emerged from her office adjacent to Corbin's. "I'm here to see my husband," I replied, suddenly feeling like I needed an appointment. "He's in meetings all afternoon. Perhaps you should have called first." At home, Corbin began working later and later. His explanations evolved from apologetic to matter-of-fact to irritated when questioned. "Building a company requires sacrifice, Cora. Surely you understand that." One night, exhausted from my shifts, I fell asleep on the couch waiting for him. His phone, left behind in his rush that morning, pinged with a message that lit up the screen. "Rebecca, working late again tonight. Ordered dinner from Maison. Your favorite booth in the back." I scrolled up, my stomach tightening. Dozens of exchanges increasingly familiar. Inside jokes. Compliments. Late-night messages no executive assistant needed to send. When confronted, Corbin's denial came too quickly. "She's being professional, anticipating my needs. That's literally her job." At midnight, commenting on how good you looked in your blue suit. His expression hardened. "You're being ridiculous. This is why I can't discuss business with you. You're too emotional, too small-minded." The man who once valued my financial acumen now spoke to me as if I were a child. The shift was subtle at first, a condescending tone here, an eye roll there, but it accelerated rapidly. My birthday passed without acknowledgement. Our anniversary became just another Tuesday. When his company was featured in a regional business magazine, my name wasn't mentioned once in the 4-page spread celebrating his solo journey to success. "They interviewed you for 3 hours, I said, staring at the glossy photos of Corbin, Rebecca, and Mia posed in the gleaming office. "You never mention me once?" He shrugged, barely glancing up from his laptop. It wasn't relevant to the business narrative. 7 years of my life dismissed as irrelevant. The final confirmation came when I borrowed his laptop to pay our bills, something I still handled despite the company's success. A document was minimized in the corner. A lease agreement for a luxury apartment downtown, effective immediately. That night, Corbin didn't come home until 3 a.m. When he did, he smelled of expensive perfume and rehearsed excuses. "This isn't working anymore," he said flatly the next morning. "We want different things. Or you and Rebecca." His silence was answer enough. 2 days later he moved out. 3 weeks after that, divorce papers arrived while I was tying my apron for my diner shift. The grounds cited? Irreconcilable differences. The terms offered? A generous one-time settlement that amounted to less than 6 months of his new salary. When I called Corbin in disbelief, Mia answered his phone. "He's very busy," she said, satisfaction evident in her voice. The lawyers will handle everything from here. Though frankly, dear, you should be grateful for his generosity. What exactly did you contribute besides being a temporary support system? As I hung up, I remembered the prenup from Paris, still sealed in its envelope and hidden in my old financial textbook from college. The one book Corbin would never think to open. The prenup felt heavy in my hands as I slid it back into the textbook. For a moment I hesitated. Was I really ready to go to war with the man I had once loved enough to sacrifice everything for? My phone buzzed with a text from my diner manager asking if I could cover an extra shift. The irony wasn't lost on me, still scrambling for hours while my husband leased luxury apartments. That night I made a decision. Before lawyers and courtrooms, Corbin deserved one last chance to do the right thing. I deserved one last chance to look him in the eyes when he refused. I arrived at Restock Solutions just after 6, when most employees would be gone. The receptionist, someone I'd never met, looked startled when I walked in. I'm sorry, we're closed for appointments. You'll need to. I'm here to see Corbin Reynolds. I'm his wife. Her eyes widened slightly. Oh. I didn't realize. Let me see if he's available. 5 minutes later, I was ushered into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Corbin sat behind an enormous desk, his expression carefully neutral. This is unexpected, he said, not bothering to stand. I thought we agreed to communicate through our attorneys. No, you decided that. I never agreed to anything. I remained standing, refusing the chair he half-heartedly gestured toward. I want to hear it from you directly. After everything we've been through, after everything I sacrificed. Here we go again with the sacrifices, he sighed, checking his watch. Nobody forced you to work those jobs, Cora. You didn't force me, but you sure were happy to benefit from them. 7 years, Corbin. I put you through 7 years of startup life. And I'm compensating you fairly for that time. The settlement offer is more than generous. I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. 6 months of your salary for 7 years of my life. That's your definition of generous. What exactly do you think you're entitled to? His voice took on an edge. You didn't code anything. You didn't pitch to investors. You didn't build client relationships. I kept a roof over our heads. I paid for the prototypes, the equipment, the conferences. Small contributions in the grand scheme. The casual dismissal felt like a physical blow. In that moment I realized the man I married was truly gone. Or perhaps he'd never existed at all. Are you sleeping with Rebecca? I asked bluntly. His momentary hesitation told me everything. My personal life is no longer your concern, he replied coldly. It became my concern when you were still sharing my bed while pursuing her. Was she the reason for all those late meetings? Corbin stood abruptly. I don't have to justify myself to you. Rebecca understands what it takes to build something meaningful. She supports my vision without constant complaints about money or attention. I supported your vision when it was nothing but lines of code on a second-hand laptop. I supported you when we ate ramen for dinner 4 nights a week so you could buy server space. The door opened before he could respond. Mia stood there, her perfect blowout and designer suit making me acutely aware of my waitress uniform. I thought I heard raised voices, she said, eyes narrowing at me. Corbin, you shouldn't be speaking to her alone. That's what we're paying the attorneys for. We. I echoed. Since when are you paying for anything, Mia? She stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind her. I have always been my son's strongest advocate. Something you clearly failed at. She was just leaving, Corbin said dismissively. Mia placed a manicured hand on her son's shoulder. Darling, this is exactly what I warned you about. The moment you achieved success, she shows up making demands. I'm making demands? I was incredulous. I came here hoping for an honest conversation with my husband. Ex-husband, Mia corrected smoothly. Or very soon to be. The papers have been filed. I'm aware. They were served to me between shifts at one of those jobs you both seem to think don't qualify as real work. Corbin at least had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. The timing wasn't intentional. Nothing ever is with you, is it? I moved toward the door, then paused. Just tell me one thing. Was any of it real? Did you ever actually love me, or was I just a convenient funding source until something better came along? His eyes met mine briefly, then slid away. We wanted different things. It's that simple. Such a shame, Mia added, unable to resist twisting the knife. All those years wasted on someone who clearly wasn't your equal. But you've upgraded nicely. As if on cue, Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her expression shifting from confusion to cool assessment when she saw me. Sorry to interrupt. The investors are on the conference line. We'll be right there, Corbin replied, gratitude for the interruption evident in his voice. I looked between the three of them, my husband, his mother, his mistress, and felt something break free inside me. Not my heart, that had been breaking slowly for months. This was different. This was the last thread of hope that there might be some amicable resolution, some acknowledgement of our shared history. Goodbye, Corbin, I said quietly, walking past Rebecca without a second glance. That night, I sat alone in what had once been our apartment, surrounded by the modest furnishings we'd collected over 7 years of struggle. Photos still hung on the walls, evidence of happier times, of the dreams we'd shared. I took them down one by one. For 3 days I moved through my shifts mechanically, serving food, taking orders, driving strangers across town, all while a storm raged inside me. Disbelief gave way to crushing sadness, then to something I hadn't expected: anger. Not just at Corbin or Mia or Rebecca, but at myself. For believing in someone who saw me as nothing more than a stepping stone. For shrinking myself to fit into the space he'd allowed me. For forgetting my own worth. On the 4th day I called in sick to all 3 jobs. Instead, I visited the college library where I'd once studied finance, where ambitious, confident Cora Matthews had planned her rise through the corporate world before she met Corbin Reynolds. I opened my old textbook and removed the Paris prenup from its hiding place. Then I called the number of an attorney a regular customer at the diner had once given me, just in case. Marilyn Chin answered on the second ring. "This is Cora Reynolds," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in weeks. "I understand you specialize in divorce cases involving businesses and hidden assets." "I do," she replied. "Why don't you tell me your situation?" As I began to explain, I felt something shifting inside me, the first sparks of determination replacing the ashes of what had been. This wasn't just about money or revenge. This was about reclaiming 7 years of erased contributions. About standing up and being counted. About becoming visible again. Marilyn Chin was everything I needed in a lawyer. Sharp, uncompromising, and undeterred by Corbin's growing status in the business community. Unfortunately, her expertise came with a price tag that threatened to deplete my meager savings within weeks. "I can offer you a payment plan," she suggested during our second meeting, her eyes softening briefly. "But I won't sugarcoat this. Going up against a well-funded opponent is challenging." "I've been living on challenging for 7 years," I replied. "I'm not backing down now." When the first court date arrived, I'd pawned my engagement ring to cover Marilyn's retainer. The small diamond had once seemed like the most precious thing in the world. Corbin had saved for months to buy it. Now it represented just another sacrifice in a long line of them. I arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early, dressed in the only business suit I owned, purchased for interviews long before I'd met Corbin. It was slightly outdated and a bit too loose after years of running between jobs had whittled away at my frame. Marilyn met me on the courthouse steps, her sleek briefcase and confident stride a stark contrast to my nervous energy. "Remember what we discussed," she said quietly as we walked through security. "Stay calm, answer only what's asked, and let me handle the objections." We were the first to arrive in the assigned courtroom, a tactical decision on Marilyn's part to help settle my nerves. 20 minutes later, the doors swung open with theatrical timing. Corbin entered first, wearing what I recognized as a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Behind him strode a phalanx of 4 attorneys, each carrying identical leather portfolios embossed with the gold logo of Harrington and Walsh, one of the city's most prestigious law firms. Rebecca followed, dressed in a conservative navy dress that successfully communicated professional colleague rather than other woman. Her eyes met mine briefly before sliding away. Last came Mia, her entrance carefully calculated for maximum impact in her cream designer suit and pearl earrings. She placed a protective hand on Corbin's shoulder as they took their seats, deliberately angling her body to create a visual barrier between us. "Well," Marilyn murmured, "they certainly want to put on a show." Judge Eleanor Mackenzie entered the courtroom precisely at 9. In her mid-60s with silver hair pulled into a severe bun, She commanded immediate respect with a single stern glance across the room. "Let's dispense with unnecessary theatrics," she announced after the preliminary introductions. "Reynolds versus Reynolds, petition for dissolution of marriage. I've reviewed the initial filings. Mr. Harrington, you may begin." Lawrence Harrington, senior partner and lead counsel for Corbin, approached the podium with the confidence of a man who'd never lost a case. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter. My client, Corbin Reynolds, founder and CEO of Restock Solutions, is seeking an equitable dissolution of his marriage to Cora Reynolds. We've offered a generous settlement that Mrs. Reynolds has inexplicably rejected." "We reject the characterization of generous, Your Honor," Marilyn countered immediately. "My client contributed substantially to building Mr. Reynolds' business over 7 years of marriage. The proposed settlement represents a fraction of her rightful share." Harrington's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps we should establish exactly what contributions Mrs. Reynolds made to her husband's business success." What followed was a systematic dismantling of my work history. Harrington called Corbin to the stand first, establishing his credentials as a visionary entrepreneur who built something from nothing through sheer determination and brilliance. When the questioning turned to me, the tone shifted dramatically. "Mr. Reynolds, what employment did your wife maintain during your marriage?" Corbin cleared his throat. "Cora worked various jobs, mostly service positions." "Could you be more specific?" "She was a waitress at Riverdale Diner. She drove for a rideshare company. She did some bookkeeping for small businesses." "And did she have any formal role at Restock Solutions?" "No," Corbin replied. "She helped with some basic accounting in the very beginning, but we outgrew her skill level quickly." Each word landed like a slap. 7 years of my life reduced to various jobs and skills that were quickly outgrown. When it was my turn to take the stand, Harrington approached with practiced sympathy. "Mrs. Reynolds, could you tell the court your current employment situation?" "I currently work 3 jobs. I'm an administrative assistant at Westbrook Medical Center during the day, I waitress 4 evenings a week, and I drive for Share Ride on weekends." "And your annual income from these combined positions?" I swallowed hard. "Approximately $43,000 last year." "Less than 1/10 of your husband's current salary," Harrington observed. "Would you say financial considerations played a role in your marriage to Mr. Reynolds?" Marilyn objected immediately. "Argumentative and offensive, Your Honor." "Sustained," Judge Mackenzie agreed, eyeing Harrington coolly. "Counsel will refrain from insinuations." But the damage was done. The narrative was being carefully constructed. Corbin the brilliant provider, me the underemployed wife seeking a payday. The questioning continued relentlessly, picking apart every financial decision, every career choice I'd made. Why had I left Meridian Financial? Why hadn't I pursued other opportunities in finance? Wasn't it true that I'd chosen these menial jobs because they were less demanding? By lunchtime I was exhausted. In the courthouse bathroom I splashed cold water on my face, trying to compose myself for the afternoon session. "You're doing well," Marilyn assured me. "The judge isn't buying their character assassination. She's been watching you carefully." The afternoon brought Mia to the stand, perfectly coiffed and rehearsed. "Mrs. Reynolds, how would you characterize your son's marriage?" Mia adjusted her pearls. "Corbin is exceptionally generous. He supported Cora's choices, even when they limited their lifestyle. He never pressured her to find more suitable employment." "And did you observe Mrs. Reynolds contributing to your son's business success?" "Not in any meaningful way," Mia replied with practiced regret. "Corbin built that company through countless sleepless nights and brilliant innovation. Cora seemed content to remain on the periphery." Her testimony continued, painting a portrait of a young entrepreneur burdened by an unambitious wife who then had the audacity to claim credit for his success. "She always seemed fascinated by the potential financial rewards," Mia added, unprompted. "Always asking about investors and funding rather than the technology itself." By late afternoon, the atmosphere in the courtroom was stifling. Judge Mackenzie called a brief recess before closing arguments. "We're not waiting anymore," I whispered to Marilyn. "I want to present the prenup now. We agreed to hold it for rebuttal. They're burying me. I can't sit through another hour of this." When proceedings resumed, Harrington launched into a practice summation. The judge listened impassively until Corbin suddenly interrupted his own attorney. "Your Honor, may I speak directly?" he asked, with the confidence of someone unused to being refused. Judge Mackenzie raised an eyebrow but nodded. Corbin turned slightly, ensuring his profile was directed toward me, but his words carried to the entire courtroom. "I built something meaningful. Something that employs 30 people and helps hundreds of small businesses. I did that. Not Cora." His voice hardened. "She's only after my wealth. She never even worked a real job." The courtroom fell silent. 7 years of sacrifice reduced to mockery by the man I had given everything for. His mother Mia sat behind him, nodding smugly, her manicured nails tapping against the polished wooden bench. I stood up, my legs trembling but my voice steady. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit this prenup from Paris." The manila envelope felt warm in my hands as I passed it to Marilyn, who approached the bench with measured steps. Judge Mackenzie accepted the document with a raised eyebrow. "A prenuptial agreement?" she asked, examining the first page. "Mr. Harrington, were you aware of this document's existence?" The attorney's composure slipped momentarily as he glanced back at Corbin, whose expression had transformed from smug confidence to dawning horror. "Your Honor, this is the first we're hearing of any prenuptial agreement. We question its authenticity and relevance at this late stage." Marilyn smiled thinly. "The document is dated and notarized in Paris, France, 7 years ago during the couple's honeymoon. It bears Mr. Reynolds' signature, which can be verified by the court's expert if necessary." Judge Mackenzie adjusted her glasses, scanning the pages with increasing interest. "This appears to be in order. Would you care to summarize the relevant portions for the court, Ms. Chin?" "Certainly, Your Honor. The prenuptial agreement explicitly acknowledges my client's financial contributions to the founding of Restock Solutions. It categorizes these contributions as sweat equity and establishes Mrs. Reynolds as a 49% owner of the company and all related intellectual property." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Across the aisle, Corbin's face had drained of color. He whispered frantically to Harrington, who appeared equally blindsided. Mia's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat, her expression oscillating between disbelief and outrage. "Furthermore," Marilyn continued over the commotion, "the agreement contains a clause that in the event of divorce, Mrs. Reynolds' ownership stake would be recognized independently from any divorce settlement." Judge Mackenzie silenced the room with a single sharp rap of her gavel. "Mr. Reynolds, do you recognize your signature on this document?" Corbin stood slowly, tugging at his collar. "Your Honor, I may have signed something in Paris, but I wasn't fully aware of the contents. It was our honeymoon. There was champagne involved." "Are you suggesting you were intoxicated when you signed a legal document, Mr. Reynolds?" The judge's tone made it clear this wasn't a favorable defense. "Not intoxicated perhaps, but not fully cognizant of what I was signing. I couldn't help but speak up. He was sober enough to meet with investors that same day and secure our first round of funding." Judge Mackenzie nodded thoughtfully. "Ms. Chin, please continue." Marilyn proceeded to enumerate the years of multiple jobs I had worked, the specific amounts I had contributed to business expenses, and the unpaid hours I had devoted to bookkeeping and administrative support during the company's earliest days. "Mrs. Reynolds didn't simply support her husband emotionally, Your Honor. She financially underwrote his dream while working 3 jobs simultaneously. Restock Solutions exists today because of her sacrifice and direct financial investment." For the next 20 minutes, the courtroom was transformed. No longer was I the gold-digging wife seeking an unearned payday. Instead, the portrait emerging was of a woman who had invested years of labor and thousands of dollars into a partnership, only to be erased from the narrative once success arrived. Judge Mackenzie listened intently, occasionally directing questions to both attorneys. As Marilyn concluded her presentation, the judge removed her glasses and addressed the courtroom. "I'm recessing for 30 minutes to review this document thoroughly. When we reconvene, I'll deliver my preliminary ruling on property division and ownership recognition." Her gaze swept across Corbin's legal team. "I suggest you use this time to confer with your client about a more realistic approach to settlement." In the hallway outside, Marilyn squeezed my arm gently. "That went better than we could have hoped. The judge clearly sees the inequity here. Before I could respond, Harrington approached, his earlier confidence noticeably diminished. "Miss Chin, Mrs. Reynolds, a word?" He glanced around, ensuring privacy. "My client is prepared to offer a significantly improved settlement if you're willing to negotiate outside the courtroom." I thought of all the nights I'd driven strangers across town while Corbin worked on his code. The holidays I'd missed with family because I couldn't afford time off from multiple jobs. The dreams I'd deferred while nurturing his. 49%, I replied calmly. "That's not negotiable. But I'm willing to discuss terms for how we structure the business relationship moving forward." When we reconvened, Judge Mackenzie didn't waste time on preamble. "Having reviewed the prenuptial agreement, I find it valid and binding. Mrs. Reynolds is hereby recognized as owning 49% of Restock Solutions and all related assets." She peered at Corbin over her glasses. "Mr. Reynolds, the court takes a dim view of attempts to mischaracterize marital contributions, particularly when documented evidence contradicts those claims." Across the aisle, Mia clutched her pearls so tightly I feared they might snap. Rebecca stared straight ahead, carefully avoiding eye contact with anyone. Corbin himself seemed to have aged years in a single afternoon, the confidential replaced by a man confronting the consequences of his own actions. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "given Mrs. Reynolds' significant ownership stake in a growing company, I'm denying the motion for spousal support as unnecessary. The parties will attend mediation to determine how to structure their business relationship moving forward, or alternatively, to negotiate a buyout of Mrs. Reynolds' interest at fair market value." As we left the courtroom, I felt strangely hollow. The victory was complete, the vindication absolute. But 7 years of my life had still been reduced to percentages and dollar amounts. No legal ruling could restore the trust one had lost, not just in Corbin but in my own judgment. Outside on the courthouse steps, reporters had gathered, alerted to the unexpected twist in what had appeared to be a routine divorce case. Marilyn fielded their questions expertly while I stood silently beside her, still processing the day's events. "Mrs. Reynolds, how does it feel to be revealed as the hidden partner behind Restock Solutions' success?" one reporter called out. Before I could answer, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. "Cora isn't speaking today," Corbin announced, emerging from the courthouse with his entourage. "This is a private matter that we'll resolve professionally." I met his gaze directly for the first time since his courtroom outburst. "Actually, I think I've been silent long enough." Turning to the reporters, I spoke with a clarity that surprised even me. Restock Solutions was built on partnership, sacrifice, and shared vision. I look forward to its continued success. Whether I remain involved or not will depend on how genuine the commitment to partnership proves to be moving forward. 1 year later, I stood at the window of my downtown office, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. After months of tense negotiation, Corbin and I had reached an agreement. A structured buyout of my ownership stake, with payments spread over 5 years to avoid destabilizing the company. The terms were favorable enough to allow me to launch Matthews Financial Advisors, specializing in helping women entrepreneurs secure funding and protect their interests. The irony wasn't lost on me. My years of struggling alongside Corbin had given me an education no business school could provide. My assistant knocked gently before entering. "Your 5 o'clock is here. And these just arrived." She placed a bouquet of lilies on my desk alongside a small envelope. Inside was a brief note. "Congratulations on the Forbes feature. You deserve the recognition." See, the magazine had named me one of their entrepreneurs to watch, highlighting both my new venture and the story behind it. The article had been fair to both Corbin and me, acknowledging his technical brilliance while crediting my financial stewardship during the critical early years. I didn't respond to the note. Some bridges, once burned, are better left as monuments to lessons learned. But I kept the flowers. That evening, as I met friends for dinner, real friends who had stood by me through the darkest days, I found myself genuinely laughing for perhaps the first time in years. The weight that had pressed upon me for so long had finally lifted. I had reclaimed not just my financial worth, but something far more valuable: my voice. And this time I wouldn't let anyone silence it again.